Welcome back to the Jay's Fifth Down podcast. I am your host, Jaden. I'm here today with Nick Winkler of the Locked On 49ers podcast there. He's here to talk about the draft and some more things pertaining to San Francisco here as we are really just a couple of days away from the draft, Nick. So let's get things rolling here, man.
Yeah, how you doing, Jay? It's good to see you.
Yeah, man, you too. So it's been a while, so now we're glad to have you back on the podcast. So, so we got the draft coming up, Nick, and it's been a lot of stuff going on, like around CJ Stroud and the quarterbacks. So things are moving around and it's just craziness. So, before we get to that, talk about your team, San Francisco, where they, I don't think they pick until the second round. So talk about how they're addressing the draft. How do you think?
So they actually don't even have a second-round draft pick this year. They don't pick until the third, and then they got a bunch of compensatory picks. And, that's still part of the, Trey Lance trade. That's gone. And then, they gave up a bunch for Christian McCaffrey, too. So the 49ers aren't going to have a good pick here for a couple of years. But and that's all right. They like where they're at overall. I know that they've been fielding a lot of calls, interest in Trey Lance. Probably not getting what they want. There's probably not. No one's really willing to give up a high draft pick for Trey Lance because what has he really proven, right? I mean, he's a guy who's been out there. He's looked electric at times. He's looked stale at times, and he can't stay healthy. So I don't think there's much of a market there. They're not just going to give him away, especially with their quarterback injury history that they've had and with Brock Purdy still recovering from off-season surgery. So they don't even know when they're going to get him back, if he's even going to come back this year. There's always that possibility that things don't go right. I don't see Trey Lance actually getting traded. I think that's a lot of smoke. It's a lot of, well, maybe. I mean, if somebody came with a really good draft pick and the 49ers just couldn't pass it up, they might, go ahead and trade Trey Lance. But I just think that they're too needy right now in that quarterback room to give up such a valuable asset.
Yeah. And Trey, it's a shame that, we couldn't get to see what this kid could do on the field because of the injuries, and I was excited actually to watch him play when he got drafted. I thought it'd be interesting, San Francisco, and maybe thought he was going to be the guy, right?
Yeah.
The injuries.
The Niners thought so too. That's why they give up so many first-round draft picks for him, right? It's just one of those things where it's been some tough luck, I'm sure. I don't think he's actually an injury-prone guy. I just think that people get injured. It's a violent game. It's tough. And that's why the 49ers, had no quarterback at the end of the NFC Championship game last year because injuries happen. And so, they went out and, they addressed the need here in the offseason, right? I mean, you go out and you bring in some veterans. I don't think they're done either. I think that until they know for sure that Brock Purdy is going to be back, I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a quarterback in this draft. Probably not in the third or fourth round, but they got some extra compensatory fifth round picks and some seventh as well. So they have a lot of draft picks. I think they have 10 or 11 overall. They just don't start till late in the third round.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, this quarterback class, it's interesting.
It's interesting, right?
It's interesting. I can't really, it's hard to put a label on. Like the past couple of years, you kind of could, put a label on it. Like last year,
sure,
it wasn't all that.
You know what it reminds me of, Jay? It reminds me of actually Sam Darnold, who the 49ers have now. It reminds me of his draft, right? Where it was like Darnold and Rosenland, like all these guys that were like, who's going to go where? There's so many good quarterbacks in this one. And it's like, were there a lot of good quarterbacks in that, or were there just a lot of good college quarterbacks in that draft that haven't really turned into much in the NFL? Is this draft going to be like this, or is this going to be another like, oh man, Dan Marino, and John Elway and Jim Kelly, this is the greatest draft of all time? I mean, obviously, time will tell on that, but I see a lot of high upside guys in this draft in the quarterback room, but I also see a lot of like, is this the next Jamarcus Russell? Is this the next Sam Darnold? Is this the next guy that maybe needs a couple of stops before they get good? Or is this a franchise turning kind of quarterback? There's a lot of that out there, and it's a lot of risk, and it's a lot of general managers whose jobs are going to be on the line, right? Tied to this pick that they're going to make here in the first round. So I'm excited to see where a lot of these guys go because there's so many question marks. Who's going number one? Do we really know? Probably not.
I don't know. I can't tell you.
No,
because it keeps the news just keeps changing about it. It's like, okay, well, CJ Stroud might be Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Who knows? It might be another position. It may not be. I don't know.
Right.
Right?
We don't know. Somebody could trade out of it at the last minute, right? I mean, there's so many moves that could still be made out there that I'm excited to see, what's going to happen here come Thursday. I love draft time. It's so exciting.
It is. It's the best time of the offseason. You just get to, because it's the anticipation, right? You just what's going to happen. So like you said, going over the guys, as far as the quarterbacks are concerned, with Stroud and Young, of course, Levis and Anthony Richardson, those are the main guys in this crop. Out of those guys, Nick, who do you really see in your eyes going where, and maybe, the best fits for those players?
Yeah, it's a tough call, right? I mean, I think that the best kind of landing spot there near the top of the draft might be the Colts, just because of what they've got, with Jonathan Taylor, who's one of the best running backs in football, right? And so you get into a situation like that where you don't have to just be the quarterback that comes in there and wins it immediately, where you can actually rely on your running game. I think whoever Indianapolis gets, I think that quarterback's immediately going to get a good shot at a future, really. I mean, it's just so tough to call, it's so tough to see who's gonna, are these guys going to be immediately thrown in there and expected to start from day one? Because that doesn't always work out. A lot of times that actually can hinder development when it comes to a quarterback and things like that. I mean, Patrick Mahomes came in, he didn't start till the very last game of his rookie season. He got to sit behind Alex Smith and kind of watch everything as it was going down. And so I think that really helped him. I think that really helped in the developmental process. I mean, Lamar Jackson also didn't start from day one, right? I mean, they brought him in and Flacco was the guy. So there's a lot that can be said for that. But then there's also hey, get out there and learn on the fly. Can you be that guy? I don't know. I don't know if any of these guys have it in them, or maybe all four do. It's really fun to see what's going to happen for them, and just for other teams too. I mean, what are the Lions going to do with their pick, right? I mean, what are the Falcons going to do? These teams that, to me, did a lot of great things in the offseason. I mean, obviously the Lions with this whole betting scandal, that obviously is going to hurt them a little bit, but yeah. But I love what else they've done. I love what Atlanta's done. I love what a lot of teams have done. So I want to see where they feel they need to fill the gaps, right? When you have these draft picks that are, not necessarily at the top of the draft, but you have a top 15 pick. You're going to get a blue chip player this season. I really believe that. I think there's a lot of talent and a lot of positions. And I want to see what the potential contenders, especially in the NFC, are going to do with their draft picks. Or if they're going to stay put, or if they're going to okay, there's a lot of areas we need. Let's trade down, get a few extra picks, and go from there.
Yeah, I can see some teams, trading up, trading down. Like, for instance, the Arizona Cardinals sit at pick 3. They
got so many holes.
Yeah, so it's like, do they, do you want to, a lot of people say they might take Will Anderson, which would not be a bad pick, right? It's just,
sure,
you have, like you said, so many holes. It's just
so many.
This part is so hard. It's tough. It's fun.
It is. It is. It's really exciting. It's really fun to see what's going to happen. Where who's going to address what need, who's going to trade and get more draft picks, more assets. Is DeAndre Hopkins going to get traded on draft day? I don't know, but I can't wait to find out.
I can't wait either. It's going to be awesome. I have prepared a little mock draft myself, and I'll just go through it.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so basically, I'll probably do just the first 15 guys out of time's sake. But first, I got Carolina taking C.J. Stroud. I got the Texans taking Bryce Young, and I got the Colts trading up with the Cardinals to pick Will Levis.
Yeah, I can see that.
Then moving down, like I said, they move back to 4 and they take Will Anderson there. Seattle, Anthony Richardson, Seattle. Do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that if he goes to the right place, I think he could be the next big thing. I mean, he's got all the tools, right? And I think that if he's not rushed in and he's not, because confidence is so important, and if you get thrown into the wrong situation and your confidence gets shot early on, that could just derail your entire career. And I think that Seattle is a good spot because he wouldn't be expected to jump right in, right? They gave Geno Smith a little bit of cash. And they're like, thank you for what you did last year. Do it again. And if you do spend a high draft pick on a blue chip sort of quarterback like that, and you're able to let him sit for a year, maybe even two, that might be huge. I like that. I would like that for Seattle. And, I'm not, as a Niner fan, I hope they don't. Because Richardson's a guy I want to root for, so I don't want to have to be like, he's a Seahawk. Like when Russell Wilson went there, I wanted to root for Russell Wilson, but I couldn't because he's on my rival team.
Right, yeah. And Anthony Richardson, we talked about him before. He's such a freak athletically. His intangibles are just incredible. However, it's just the things like more so up here.
Sure,
that could probably be a little bit concerning for him. And again, that's just gonna come.
And the accuracy too, right? I mean, you compare it a little bit to Josh Allen when he came out of college. He had all the tools. Yeah, he was a freak of nature. He is this huge, fast human being with an amazing arm, but he couldn't always hit his receivers, right? And then you just look at his progression from year to year and how he just got so much better. That's what you want from a guy like Richardson. And maybe if he's sitting and he's able to work on those things and work on arm technique and work on your feet, because they really say that the feet are where the accuracy comes from, right? With a quarterback and when it comes to all that sort of technique, that it starts from the bottom up. And so if they could get him into a place like Seattle, who has, let's take a look at their past two quarterbacks, right? I mean, it's been really good with Russell Wilson, and they immediately were like, let's get rid of that guy. Bring in Geno Smith, who's done not much anywhere else, and all of a sudden he has a career year. So maybe there is something to be said for that coaching staff there in Seattle, and they could work wonders for Richardson. So I think that's a great. Who else you got? Well, keep going down this list.
Yes, of course. So you got Devin Witherspoon from Illinois going to the Detroit Lions. I think they need to continue to address the
that would be big.
And adding a guy like him to that secondary would be huge. Then I got the Raiders taking Christian Gonzalez, another corner, at 7. Another team with secondary issues. And then my Falcons at pick number 8. I have us taking Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech. He's an edge player. I don't think Atlanta needs to go offense in this draft particularly.
No, defense is the way to go. Yeah. Agreed. Keep building, because the Niners have shown, right? That's where you build. You build from the defensive side, and, it can carry over onto the offensive side. You can really win a lot of football games if your defense is out there stopping the other teams. I think that'd be exactly what Atlanta should do.
Yeah, but a lot of people want them to take Bijan Robinson. I'm like, they got a running back. He's good. I like Tyler Algier.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. But anyway, moving on. Chicago, I got them taking Jalen Carter at pick number 9. They could use a defensive interior presence. I mean, and then of course everybody's talking about the off-field stuff. And look, that's just it's gonna be handled regardless. So that's just gonna be.
I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit took him. Actually, a little bit earlier, too, because that's, you got Aiden Hutchinson, right? You got a defensive end. You can put a big guy in the middle to take up some of that presence and take a little pressure off of Hutchinson. That could really open things up for him, too. So don't be surprised if he goes a little bit earlier there to Detroit.
Yeah, definitely. I could definitely see him going in that range from like 6 to 9. And then,
yeah, for sure.
The Eagles at pick number 10. I mentioned Bijan earlier, but I had them taking Bijan Robinson here at pick number 10. I think I
can see that.
He would fit that offense. I think would be truly unstoppable if they get him. You already got Jalen Hurts. You got locked up, and AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. That offense with him. I think I could see that. So
that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and moving on, we got Paris Johnson Jr. going to the Titans. I have they can use the offensive line help, and then the Texans have them taking Broderick Jones from Georgia, another offensive lineman there, another team, and the Jets. I couldn't really come up with this one. I let this one a question mark because I don't know. I guess I could say an offensive lineman for them, maybe Darnell Wright.
Yeah.
And
I think that would make the most sense for them. I think if they could go out and get a little extra protection, especially if they're trying to bring in Aaron Rodgers, I think that would. Yeah, that you want to protect your assets, right? And the defense showed last year that they were solid. So I don't think they spent a high draft pick on the defense. The offensive line makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. And the New England Patriots, I have them taking Jackson. I hope I say his name right. Jackson Smith and Njigba from Ohio State. Mm-hmm. They sorely need a receiver. They need
big time.
Receiver. So I think he would be a perfect fit right here.
It just doesn't seem like a New England move, though, right? Like you're exactly right. They need it, but are they going to do it? They just seem like they'd be like, nah, we're not going to waste a first-round draft pick on offense. What are you talking about? Go get me a middle linebacker. Go get me a defensive end. Like, I don't know. I just feel like with New England, they just always, or if they do end up drafting a wide receiver, they pick wrong. So
right, that's just how it's been for the Patriots.
Yeah.
So and they like those, late round guys, those blue collar guys, But like you said, they've had success with the Amendolas and the Edelmans and the Hogans. So hey,
sure.
But
sure.
Now those guys are going, and they've
been a while, yeah.
And the offensive production from that position hasn't been there recently. And for Matt Jones' sake, they really need a receiver. That's really my.
I like it. I like where you've gone there. I mean, as a 49er fan, obviously, I worry about them most of all. And so to me, I think their biggest needs going into the draft have to start on the offensive line. I think they need some depth. They lost McGlinchey at right tackle. That's a big question mark for them. I don't think they are going to go, trade up to try and go get a guy. I think if anything, you might see a trade to get into the second round, something like that. But I don't think they're going to give up any future assets since they've already given up so much on Lance and McCaffrey that you might see a couple of those third rounds get turned into a second. Maybe they throw a fifth in there or something. And they do go after somebody to kind of try to help fill that gap left, because that to me is their biggest glaring need headed into the draft.
Yeah. And, what the 49ers have done since John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have taken over there, it's just amazing as far as the draft. Their drafting has been excellent. When you look at
especially late rounds.
Yeah, the late rounds. So, can you just give us some insight into how, important it is for you to understand, like, you're not always gonna just, the first round isn't the only place where you're gonna find these awesome players. Like, just speak about the 49ers draft tactics and how they've been so successful in that department.
Sure. You look at the 49ers draft history, and a lot of their first round draft picks have been misses, right? You're talking about Solomon Thomas, you're talking about Reuben Foster, you're talking about Javon Kinlaw, these guys that never produced for the 49ers, never did much of anything for this 49ers team. And then, they had a kind of can't miss guy in Nick Bosa, and they're sitting there at number 2, which I love. If you saw that interview with the Cardinals GM, where he was talking about Bosa coming up to them before the draft and being you guys are going to take that little quarterback and you're going to regret it for the rest of your lives. Or something. It's like, oh, that's so good. And they're right. I'm sure they do regret it. Defensive player of the year there. But so for the 49ers, they had some hits as well. They had, Debo early in the second round, Ayuk late in the first round. They did find a couple of really good guys, but they've also hit guys late. You go after, you talk about, Fred Warner. You talk about George Kittle. You talk about Brock Purdy. You're talking about these guys who are starters who got super late in the draft, who are blue chip guys that could have easily, you look back now and you go back and, let's go redraft that draft. Those guys are going a lot earlier than the third round, then the fifth round, then the very last pick of the draft. They've been able to see something in these guys. And I think most of all, what the 49ers do best and what John Lynch does best as general manager, it was one of the first things he said when he took over that job. Look, I know what I don't know, and I have people that do know those things, and I'm going to lean on them, and I'm going to trust them. So I think what he's done a lot is he's talked with Kyle Shanahan. Is this guy going to fit your system? I'm not just going to go get you somebody who's super talented if you're not going to be able to use him. And I think that they've made some mistakes on that too. CJ Beathard was a guy that Kyle Shanahan had to have. Joe Williams, the running back, he had to have him, and those were misses. But he also had to have Deebo Samuel. And so that seems to have worked out. He really wanted Brock Purdy because of his college, and he knew he could just implement a guy like that right into his system and work it out. So I think that those two guys together have created such an amazing tandem. And Adam Peters as well, the right-hand man of John Lynch. He's kind of the unsung hero in all of this. He was the first hire for John Lynch. He knew that I need to get this guy who's a genius who could do my job if something were to happen to me. Plus, I've never done this job before because he went straight out of the booth into the general manager's chair, which for John Lynch had to be tricky. So he surrounded himself with good people. He listens to his people, and he gets the right people for his system. And he's made some amazing trades. They traded for Trent Williams. They traded for CJ or for McCaffrey. They make these trades. They've gone out and done things. They traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, which to me totally changed the trajectory of this franchise. They were down and out. They were garbage. As 49er fans can attest, Brian Hoyer, CJ Beathard, like ever since Kaepernick left, it was a tough time to be a 49er fan. And then they traded for Jimmy, and it just kind of turned everything around. It was like, all right, now they believe in this franchise. They believe in this quarterback. Let's go. And yes, Jimmy, I think he's going to do great in Las Vegas now. I'm excited for my Raider fans, friends. They got themselves a really great quarterback there. And for the 49ers, what's going to happen under center the start of this season? I have no idea. I'm excited to find out. I'm excited to see if Trey Lance can actually step up during the OTAs and during all this offseason stuff when he's going to be getting all those first team reps. Sam Darnold's going to be getting some too, but Trey Lance they want him to be the guy. They gave up a lot. There's that hubris in all of us, right? Where we just want to be right all the time. And for the 49er fans and John Lynch, they give up a lot to get Trey Lance. So they still think they can be right and they want to be right. And so all this talk about him getting traded, I don't buy it. Unless it's one of those guys that's like, oh, we're sitting here at 6 overall. We'll give you that, that draft pick this year for Trey Lance. I think it would need to be something like that for the 49ers to actually pull the trigger.
Yeah, I believe so too. I don't think he'll get traded. I just don't, unless you say
they can't afford it. Like they need quarterbacks. They went through too many last year to be able to just be giving them away.
Right. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But like you mentioned, just how John and Kyle have addressed the draft and over the past couple years because they found like some great pieces in the late rounds. I mean, Fred Warner turned into a stud defensive
best linebacker in football.
And I mean, like you said, Debo in the same round. Like
Kittle was a 5th round draft pick.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It just goes to show, you don't. I mean, the narrative that it's the first round. Oh, first round, like we got those. That's where the only the best talent is. No, not really. Tom Brady was a 7th round draft pick.
Yeah. Not all first rounders hit. I think the majority of them don't hit. So yeah.
Yeah, so I just, I mean, another thing is talent too. Like it's
the
big question is always for the GMs, like, are drafting based off of need or best player available, right? It's such.
And I think what the 49ers do is they draft on fit. Is this the guy that can fit our system? Is this the guy that fits what we want to do here? And and again, they made some misses. The Reuben Foster thing is one of to me, their biggest misses and one of the biggest letdowns too, because you watched him play at Alabama and it was just like, this guy's a wrecking ball. Like he's going to get in the NFL and he's going to just destroy. And I was so excited and for it to be such a big miss, with the off the field stuff and then just not really living up to his potential on the field. That's you can set a franchise back quite a ways, especially if you have like a top 10 pick, and you go out and you're like, you need that person to step in and really help you move forward, and then they miss, and it's like, hit the reset button. Let's start over.
Yes. So that's interesting. So we'll see what happens there. Like I said, the draft is on this Thursday.
Can't wait.
Live from Kansas City. I'm excited for Nick. And yeah, so but the last thing here on the podcast before we hop off, Nick, and we, like I said, it's been a while since we spoke together, but Odell, I'm sure you saw, to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Do you think this incentivizes Lamar Jackson to come back?
It has to a little bit, right? I mean, you're talking about a guy who's a playmaker. When he went to LA, he showed like, look, I'm not done. I've still got a bunch left in the tank here, and he helped the Rams get to a Super Bowl. They probably don't make that run without Beckham Jr. So I think that it was a smart move on their part to kind of, bring him in and just be like, look, we got you essentially a new toy. Like, come on, throw the ball deep to this guy. He'll be open. You haven't had a really great receiver in a while. So come on. I think it was a smart move on their part. I think they'd be smart to lock up Lamar Jackson long-term too. I think that he's got a lot of years left and he's a great quarterback.
Yeah, he is. And now with that Jalen Hurts extension, it kind of puts Lamar Jackson in a situation where it's like, dude, at this point, you just...
Yeah. Take a little less, man. Take a little less.
Yeah.
You have to. I know that he wants, that Deshaun Watson money, right? But Deshaun Watson never should have got that Deshaun Watson money. That was stupid. And so that hurt a lot of other franchises and their ability to sign a guy like Lamar Jackson because they set that bar so high for, let's be honest, he was a trash quarterback last year. Yeah, I know he missed a lot of time and he missed basically the whole season before, but he's had a lot of money for a long period of time. And so that might actually reset the quarterback market a little bit. You saw it with Jalen Hurts, right? He got less guaranteed money than Watson did, and Hurts has just led his team to a Super Bowl. So yeah, I think that might kind of reset Lamar's thinking a little bit and just kind of maybe like, okay, maybe I don't need that guaranteed Deshaun money. Maybe I go more for the Jalen Hurts guaranteed money, which is still a ridiculous sum of money.
And another note, he was offered something similar back in September.
Yeah, that he declined or something, right?
So
reportedly, maybe they put it back on the table and they're like, look, it's good enough for Jalen. Hopefully, I want to see him play football.
I don't know, man. You know, I mean, and I like a quote Jalen Hurts just had recently. He said, you know, yeah, money's nice, but championships are better. That's what he said. And I just love that, man. That shows you the type of guy he is. And, you know, and he wants to win. I mean, and so sometimes you're going to have to, to build around him, you're going to have to take a little less money. So,
I mean, you take a look at what Tom Brady did, right? How many times did Tom Brady restructure his contract and take less money so that the team could go out and spend money to put guys around him? So for Jalen, hey, put your money where your mouth is, you know? You say championships are more important. Let's see what happens in 2 years if he's out there restructuring his deal, trying to help out the team so they can bring in more guys. I hope he does. I hope he lives up to it. I mean, I say I hope he does, but as a Niner fan, I hope the Eagles crash and burn. But
I mean, you really two teams really run the NFC. I mean, as of right now,
that's right.
Niners and the Eagles until someone else proves otherwise. So we'll see if that can happen. But that'll wrap us up today, Nick, for the podcast. Thank you for coming on and talking some draft with us and giving some good insight there in the 49ers draft process. And as I mentioned, Thursday, man, not too far away. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Jay.
All right, man. Thank you for coming on. We will see you next time, Nick.
Sounds good, bud. See ya.
All right.